some ways, that idea of offence has become almost a business. And it's interesting that in Matthew, when Jesus was talking to his disciples, he actually was talking about the end times, and he said, "And then shall many be offended, and be betrayed one another, and shall hate one another." Goes on to about false prophets. "And then the love of many shall wax cold," or shall wane cold. Now that love is actually about the agape love, God's love. And here he is warning, saying, in the end times, there's going to be a lot of people in the church who will take offence to things. And when they take offence to things, the reaction or the response will be a weakening of their love of God and showing of their love. And if you have a look at churches today, I kind of think, maybe we're kind of heading there, really. You see it and you hear it where people go, "No, don't like it, I'm going to change church. How dare they think that I'm going to change?" Yeah, it is a bit of a common thing. So let's have a look at offence. Offence, if we look at the worldview, I suppose, is that concept of perceived disregard for a person's feeling, rights, or values. That idea of, how dare he treat me like this? Who does he think he is? What right does he have to? However, when you look at the Bible and the definition that the Bible gives to the idea of offend, it's really quite interesting. The word is scandalon. Have I said it right? Scandalon. It's a Greek word and actually means part of a trap that bait is attached to. If you think about the old bear trap and you put something there, or a mouse trap and you put something on there, that thing there is that idea of offence. To cause to sin, to make angry, a stumbling block. And if you think about that concept of Satan using the concept of offence in order to ensnare us. I use a lot of visuals because that's the way I learned, so sorry. Okay, so first question, did Jesus offend people? Thoughts? Oh, wow, okay. That was a lot. Okay, who did he offend? Pharisees? Religious people? Do you think disciples? In fact, yeah, there's quite a few that he offended. For who he was, we kind of think, he's a God of love. He was, all about love and grace. Firstly, there were the Pharisees he called hypocrites, and he said, all the stuff that you're doing, it's worthless, and you're not doing anything with it. So that was pretty strong. And yeah, they were offended. The disciples came to him. He even went to his hometown, and he didn't get a hometown party. He didn't get like the bandwagon going, "Yay, fantastic, you're back. Come on, preach to us, yeah." In fact, they looked at him and went, "Hang on, you're that little grot that was running around our feet, and now you're doing this and you're saying this." They were offended. And in fact, he left because of the fact that because of their offence, because they were offended, their faith was weak. And in fact, after Jesus had talked to them about that concept, a weird concept of him being the bread of life, and I think they started to realise, hang on, we've been following this guy because we thought some revolution was going to happen, and now he's talking about sacrifice? Even his own followers, eventually, many of them, became offended and left. So yeah, he did offend, definitely. However, in all the cases, it was the offence of the cross. It was the concept of not about him and his own personal feelings, his own personal ability to take something away from it, but it was actually all in relation to God the Father. The truth that he had to be told. That concept of the offence of the cross. And we are in a situation today where the very belief that we have is offensive to people. To some people, they find what we believe in really offensive. And they stick it on social media and they tell us all about it. So when we speak our truth, and we have to speak our truth, and there very well may be a situation where because we speak our truth, people are offended. It's really important that we have that love. That what we speak not for us, not for our sake in any way, but for the sake of the gospel. And we do it in love. It may not help. And especially with recent debates in relation to gay marriage, etc., we know that there's been some Christians who've done it really poorly, and there's other Christians who've tried really hard to humbly come and say, listen, I just want to share my view. And for some of them, they've been met with the same offence and the same backlash. The interesting thing is that there was one time when Jesus actually said, I'm not going to do something because I don't want to offend someone. Do you know what it was? The temple officials wanted the temple taxes and came to the disciples and said, you need to pay taxes. And the disciples went to Jesus and said, hey, they want taxes and temple taxes. And Jesus was like going, you know that I'm Son of God, and therefore that temple is actually my Father's, and I'm going, they're paying the money to my Father. But he said, lest we offend, let's pay the taxes. He did it in a really icky way. He stuck some coins. He got some coins out of a fish's mouth, and there it is. But again, it was that concept of, hey, it's not about me. I don't want to offend because of me, because of some issue that I have to do to pay. It's actually because of that I don't want to offend. So our goal, of course, to do all that you can, to live in peace with everyone. So the question is, did Jesus take offence? Examples? Yeah, very much so. Now, it doesn't actually say, I couldn't really find a good, I saw that and thought, awesome, let's go cartoon. It doesn't say that he was offended, but you can see that because of what they had done to his father's house, that he was angry. It was a righteous anger. And in that situation, he had an offence of what was happening to his father's house. But of course, a lot of the time, this is very much who Jesus was about. He didn't have pride. He didn't take because of who he was. He didn't come down with a bolt of lightning and say, you need to. He was humble, even to the point of death. So what does that mean for us? Firstly, a disclaimer. I don't know where you're at. I don't know what's happened in your life. And what I'm talking about in this particular sermon is something that, firstly, I want to say, there's no belittling here. Things happen, rubbish things happen to people. Horrible things happen to people. And they shouldn't happen to people, but they do. And also, the concept of what we're talking about with offence and how we can deal with it and how we can maybe not be trapped in offence doesn't negate the concept of consequences. And when bad things happen, yes, there should be consequences. Sometimes there aren't, but there should be. So I just wanted to kind of make that clear, because the last thing I wanted to do is stand up here and go, oh, we shouldn't take offence. And of course, it's quite superficial for me to do that and not know where you're at. Proverbs 18:19. An offended friend is harder to win back than a fortified city. Arguments separate friends with a gate locked with bars. And we understand that idea of fortified city. Big, big wall. No in, no out. Trump would be loving it. Okay? That's the idea of this whole big, hey, because of that offence, I'm not going to allow you to get close to me in any way, shape or form. But of course, when you've got a fortified city, you've got a very little door. And often what happens is that you stop lots of people from getting close to you. And so that concept of when you're offended, what harm is it doing to you? That concept of need of offence. This is another analogy that I think is really quite potent. We will get offended. Things will happen where we'll go, I don't like that. What do we do with that then? Does it still remain a seed? Or is it planted? Is it fed? Is it developed? Do the roots of bitterness go deep as you dwell on it? And because of that, therefore, the fruits, broken relationships, inability to trust others, unforgiveness, our relationship with God will suffer. Our ability to show God's love will wane. These are the fruits that can come out when we harbour offence and not deal with it, when we grow it, when we develop it. Bearing with one another, and if one has a complaint against another, forgiving one another as the Lord has forgiven you, so you also must forgive. It's easy to be said, it's harder to do. But it is in stark contrast to that concept of a seed of offence that turns into bitterness and jealousy. The biggest barrier to restoring relationships, the biggest barrier to releasing you from that trap of offence are two words. Just two words. Do you know what those two words are? Yeah, but. Yeah, but you just don't understand what they've done. Yeah, but this is different. Yeah, but she doesn't even care about the fact that she hurt me. But it hurts so much. I'm not Jesus. Yeah, but I'm not Jesus. Sure, he forgives. Yes, fine. But I'm not Jesus. And the two words, yeah, but, puts a halt on any growth that we can have. And when we hold on to those words, when we allow them to fester, when we allow the roots of bitterness to go deeper and deeper, they can ruin the concept of being without offence. They can starve your relationship with God. John Bevere wrote The Bait of Satan, and he says, often we judge ourselves by our intentions and everyone else by their actions. It is possible to intend one thing while communicating something totally different. And sure, there are situations where bad things happen and it's just bad and it's right there, absolutely. But a lot of the times we get offended by something and we don't even go back to go, what did you mean? Hey, when you said that, I kind of felt a bit this way. What were you thinking? What was your train of thought on that? However, we know what we're thinking. We know our thoughts. And there is a problem with that. When we judge ourselves by our intention, but we judge others by our action, by their actions. And this is a common one that we often hear. If they come to me and say sorry, then I will consider forgiving. We're not forgetting. If and then. I'm interested in that whole concept of the if and then. If they ask for forgiveness, then, yeah, we can talk about me in the power of being the one who can forgive. And so we become the victim mentality in some ways. We don't do anything to actually deal with the offence. We don't go to them. We don't talk to them. Talk to other people, absolutely. But don't talk to them. We don't know what they're thinking. But then, well, you know, if they come to me, then, but they haven't come to me, so... And sometimes they don't even realise that they've offended you. To avoid the trap of offence, can I just encourage one thing? Communicate and listen. That used to be shut up and listen. I kind of dumbed it down a bit. And I realised that it actually takes communication as well. Communicate and listen. We have 2 ears, we have one mouth. God made it that way for a reason. Listening doesn't cost anything. letting them talk doesn't cost anything. And in fact, the Bible talks about everyone should be quick to listen. They should be slow to speak. They should be slow to anger. There was very much that on James, that very much idea of, hey, let's work it out first. Let's find out what it's all about first. Don't just jump in and judge. A fool takes no pleasure in understanding, but only expressing his opinion. If we want to be making sure that we don't fall into the trap of offence, we need to spend the time to understand. That doesn't mean that offence hasn't happened. That doesn't mean that a wrong thing hasn't occurred. It may very well have occurred. But for the times where it's a misunderstanding, we can solve the situation. Jesus was a listener. Yep, sure, he spoke to thousands upon thousands, but he also listened. Zacchaeus, the woman at the well, the children. And he was really good at asking those questions that made you think, the reflective questions, and then giving time for them to say their answer. Have a look through the Gospels and you can see some of those questions. And I think that the 3 circles, if we have a look at this, we know our self-focus. We know what we understand about ourselves. We know what we're thinking. And if we do a bit of research, we also know what God's thinking about a particular situation. And often that's where us Christians stay. We go, yep, I know that he's done the wrong thing or she's done the wrong thing because the Bible says it and they've offended me, so therefore I'm right because the Bible says it. Because the Bible said it, I'm right. They don't actually think about the concept of their side. And by doing that, that sweet point in the middle, the understanding side. So can I encourage you, if you want to avoid the trap of offence, the very concept of being proactive in what you do, in connecting. As I said, we can often just become the victim of the victim, a passive victim, where we just go, nope, I'm not going to go to them. That will show them that I'm weak. Nope. We actually need to get moving. Why? Well, here's an example. 2 passages. You probably know these passages. They're used quite a lot. Therefore, if you are offering your gift at the altar and there remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there. First go and reconcile with them. So this is where you have potentially done something wrong, where you've sinned. And here's God saying, hey, listen, before you do anything, go to your brother and sister. Sort it out. If you have to apologize, you apologize. You get it right with them. But on the other side, if another believer sins against you, go privately and point out the offence. If another person listens and confesses, if the other person listens and confesses, you have won the person back. If you're unsuccessful, take another person, go back to them. Again, take another 2 or 3, go back to them. And it keeps on going. Yes, definitely talks about, hey, if there's a continual sense of unforgiveness, unapologeticness, is that a word? Then yes, there's issues there. But then when it comes down to how many times do we forgive, it's not 7 times, it's 70 times 7. In fact, another gospel says 7 times a day. Lots and lots and lots. Now you put that and you put this together, God's saying, listen, we've got to be proactive about our relationships. We've actually, irrelevant of whether you're the one who sinned or whether you're the one who has been sinned against, we've got to be proactive. Hebrews 12, strive for peace. Strive is a very active word, isn't it? It doesn't say hope for peace. It doesn't even say pray for peace. It says strive for peace. With everyone. Keep loving one another. Love covers a multitude of sins. Be kind and compassionate, forgiving each other. The core message of the Bible is grace and forgiveness. Grace and forgiveness. If I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. A number of years ago now, quite a few years ago, I had a person at school. They were making my life heck. Can I say hell? They really were. And for some reason, we just were not connecting and things were happening. Doors were being slammed in my face and things where I kind of went, something's wrong here. Tried to go to her, didn't work. Didn't want to talk about it. Tried to show the nice, friendly Vince that I am, didn't work. So, of course, I did the next best thing. I went to a friend of mine and I wanted to just, nag at him and kind of whinge about him. I just wanted to, vent. He was a bit of a mentor of mine and he said, Vince, if you want to vent, that's fine. You can vent to me. I understand there's issues. Vent to me. But the amount of time that you are going to vent for me, we are then going to pray for her. So you want to vent for 5 minutes, then we got another 5 minutes of praying just for her. Thought about it for a while and thought, great, I need someone. And we did. And it was a regular thing, unfortunately, because I just kept on having to go back. I hadn't got it right in my own heart. But the time that we spent with me, I'm thinking of a word, I can't say it because it's church, but you know what I mean. Talking about her in a negative way. We actually prayed for her. And the prayers were superficial and more me-centered than her-centered, I just pray for her and I just pray that she'll get off my case. But then my friend kept on connecting. Now that we're going to pray for her and the blessings that you want, you need to actually pray that she will get. And so our prayers got deeper and deeper and deeper. And guess what? The situation with her did not change at all. However, I changed. There's still issues throughout the whole year, but the way that I responded to those issues, the way that I dealt with them, the way that I was able to come back and go, yep, okay. The way that I was able to show the love that God wanted me to show was very much from God. And I believe that it was because of the prayer. When our roots are based on Jesus and based on love and based on forgiveness and based on prayer, then the fruits are not the fruits of bitterness and broken relationships. They're the fruits of the Spirit, or the fruit of the Spirit. See, forgiving and getting right over offense is actually not to do with that person. It's to do with us. Third point to avoid the trap of offense: be obedient to God's word. Pray. Forgive. In fact, Jesus talked about it when it came to the rocky ground and the fact that the seeds, sower put the seeds out and the rocky ground, yes, they kind of came up, there was a bit of life, but then the trials that occurred actually killed them off again. And his explanation of it to his disciples very much said, there are people who believe God's word and go, yes, fantastic, but they don't put the roots down deep into it. And because of that, when struggles come and trials come and offences come, they don't have that depth to be able to deal with them. And they lose the Bible. They forget about the Bible. Physical growth is a function of time. Intellectual growth is a function of learning. But spiritual growth is neither a function of time or learning. It's actually a function of obedience. When we are offended by someone and we are called to forgive them, even when they haven't come to the point of asking for forgiveness, it's actually not about them, it's about you. Trust God to refine you in the fire. If you know how to refine gold, gold is actually quite a pliable thing. It's actually can be molded quite easily when it's pure gold. But if there's impurities in it, it makes it hard. The way to get those impurities out of it is through fire. Melt the gold through heat. And then the impurities will rise to the top and you can wipe them away, leaving the pure gold at the bottom. God will give us trials. Things will come along that will offend us. But by going through that, God has the opportunity, if we are continually open to Him, for us to be pliable, and to be molded to be more like. What if God was there around this time before he was going to the cross? And God was saying, Jesus, I need you to die on that cross. And there was Jesus going, what? You want what, God? You want me to do what? Did you see what they did to me? Even these closest friends that you gave me, one of them's denying me. One of them's going to has betrayed me. The rest are going to leave me. And I'll be alone. You want me to die on that cross? Do you see how they're going to harm me? How they ripped my clothes? How they tore into my flesh? How they shoved thorns into my head? And you're standing there and you're telling me you want me to die on that cross in the pain that it is. You want me to do that? Why on earth would I do that? They can all go to hell. And yet he didn't. He simply said, Father, forgive them, they know not what they do. Whilst we were still sinners, Christ died for us.